Every Assassin's Creed protagonist carries weight, loss, betrayal, watching everything they built crumble while history forgets they existed. But some of them got it so much worse than others that it's honestly hard to rank. So today, I'm breaking down the most tragic protagonists in the entire franchise, and we're starting with the one everyone underestimates, Jacob Frye. Jacob Frye gets written off as the fun one, the brawler, the twin who'd rather punch a blighter in the throat than read a single page about precursor artifacts. And sure, that's technically accurate, but here's the thing, that personality wasn't Jacob escaping tragedy, it was Jacob burying it. Born in 1847 alongside his twin sister Evie, Jacob lost his father young, not in some dramatic cutscene way, just gone, and instead of processing that like a normal human being, he got handed the Assassin's Creed and told to get to work. Evie took the intellectual route, chasing pieces of Eden, studying assassin history. Jacob built a street gang from nothing, dismantled Templar-controlled industries with his fists, and essentially rebuilt London's Brotherhood on his own back. Nobody thanked him for it. After he and Evie assassinated Crawford Starrick in 1868, you'd think the story gets better. It doesn't. Evie married Henry Green and left for India. Jacob stayed, alone, in a city that had zero idea he existed. He kept fighting, kept doing the Brotherhood's dirty work decade after decade. No recognition, no title, no statue, just more work and more silence. He was still alive at roughly 67 when World War I rolled around. He and Evie were quietly shuffled off to the countryside, while their granddaughter Lydia took over London operations. And then, nothing. No documented death, no grave that matters. Just a lifetime of thankless work followed by silence. That's Jacob Frye, the guy who smiled through all of it. Which is, not ideal, but if you think quietly fading into history is tragic, wait until you hear what happened to the twin who left. Evie, Frye, if Jacob dealt with losing his father by punching everything that moved, Evie dealt with it by never allowing herself to feel anything at all. Same trauma, same Brotherhood upbringing. Two completely opposite survival strategies. And honestly, it's hard to say which one is worse. Where Jacob externalized his grief as chaos, Evie internalized it as a need for perfection. Every mission had to be flawless. Every objective had to be met. She threw herself into recovering the Shroud of Eden with the kind of obsessive focus that only comes from someone terrified of what happens when they stop moving. Because if she stopped, she'd have to actually sit with the fact that her father was gone and the Brotherhood was all she had left. And here's the thing. While she's doing all of this, being the disciplined twin, the reliable one, the assassin who actually reads the creed before bed, she's also suppressing her feelings for fellow assassin Henry Green for years. Not because she didn't care about him, but because caring about someone felt like a distraction from the mission, which is, not ideal. Jacob got to be messy. Jacob got to feel things in real time, loudly, in front of everyone. Evie gave herself zero permission to do any of that. Her entire emotional life was on hold because the Brotherhood needed her to be serious, and she believed that meant she couldn't also be human. She did eventually marry Henry after Starrick's death. They moved to India together, and by Assassin's Creed standards, that's practically a fairy tale ending. But even that decision was filtered through loyalty to the cause. She didn't retire. She relocated to serve the Brotherhood somewhere else, and just like Jacob, she fades from the historical record entirely. Alive until at least 1914, then nothing. No grave anyone talks about, no public legacy. Decades of sacrifice and emotional suppression, and the world moved on like she never existed. But at least Evie got something resembling a personal life. The next assassin on this list didn't even get that luxury, and he lost everything trying. Edward Kenway. Everyone loves Edward Kenway. And honestly, why wouldn't you? He's a pirate. He's got the jackdaw. He's sailing around the Caribbean, stealing everything that isn't nailed down. Black Flag is one of the most beloved games in the entire franchise, and a huge part of that is because Edward's fantasy is so fun to live in. But here's the thing about fantasies. Someone always pays for them. Edward was born in Wales in 1693, married Caroline Scott, and immediately decided that domestic life wasn't enough. He wanted wealth, he wanted adventure, he wanted to be somebody. So he left. He escaped captivity on the Spanish treasure fleet in 1715, alongside Adewale, stole ships, killed people, and spent years chasing gold across the West Indies like it was the only thing that mattered. And while he was doing all of that, Caroline died. She was 29 years old. Disease took her while Edward was somewhere in the Caribbean, probably celebrating a heist. 8 years of marriage, and he spent most of it at sea. He never got the chance to come home, to fix things, to be the man he promised her he'd become. That door just closed, permanently. But the real tragedy of Edward Kenway isn't Caroline. It's what happened after he finally got his act together. See, Edward didn't join the Assassins because he believed in the creed. He joined because it was convenient. The Brotherhood's philosophy only genuinely reached him after years of loss had stripped away everything he thought he wanted. The treasure, the glory, the freedom, all of it hollow. By the time he truly committed to the assassins, he had nothing left except the cause itself. And then the enemy found him anyway. London. Edward was 42 years old. Templars, led by Reginald Birch, raided his home and murdered him. The man who had finally become someone worth respecting was cut down by the very order he'd spent years fighting, in a city thousands of miles from the Caribbean waters that defined him. His son Hatham watched it happen. Birch took the boy under his wing after killing his father, raised him, groomed him, and Hatham became a Templar Grand Master, which is, not ideal. But if you think Edward's story is painful, wait until you hear about the one protagonist who got 3 entire games and still couldn't escape tragedy. Ezio Auditore, you already know this one. Everybody knows this one. Ezio Auditore is the face of Assassin's Creed, the guy on the posters, the guy in the cosplays, the guy whose name people can actually pronounce at parties. He's the franchise's golden child. And that's exactly why his story hits different when you actually sit with it. December 29th, 1476. Ezio is 17 years old, standing in Florence's Piazza della Signoria, watching his father Giovanni and his brothers Federico and Petruccio hang from the gallows, publicly, in front of the entire city. Men his family had trusted, men his father had worked alongside, orchestrated the whole thing. Ezio didn't get a funeral. He didn't get a week to process. His mother basically broke, fled into a catatonic state, and suddenly, this teenager who'd spent his mornings chasing girls across rooftops was now the sole protector of what was left of his family. Nobody asked him if he wanted this. Nobody gave him a choice. And then he just kept going. For 48 years. Let that number breathe for a second. 48 years of service to a brotherhood he never signed up for. He saved Florence. He saved Venice. He liberated Rome from Borgia control. He traveled to Constantinople in his 50s to train Ottoman assassins. And in his final years, he was still mentoring the Chinese assassin Xiao Jun, still passing on knowledge, still giving. The man literally never stopped. Here's where it gets complicated, though. Ezio's ending is the gentlest on this list. He died at 65 of a heart attack on a bench in Florence, sitting next to his wife Sophia, their daughter Flavia nearby, peaceful, quiet, in the same piazza where his family was executed nearly 50 years earlier. And on paper, that sounds like closure. That sounds like the universe finally cutting the guy some slack. But it wasn't that simple. In his final years, Ezio carried a question he could never answer. Did any of it matter? Decades of fighting, killing, sacrificing every personal desire he ever had for a cause that was thrust on him at 17, and he died not knowing if it was enough. The franchise's most beloved protagonist closed his eyes, having given literally everything, and his last private thought was doubt. That's the thing about Ezio. We remember the charm, the confidence, the iconic hood. We don't sit with the fact that underneath all of it was a man who spent his entire adult life wondering if the cost was worth it, which is, not ideal, but at least Ezio got a bench and a sunset. The next assassin on this list didn't even get that. Altair ibn La'ahad. Every other name on this list exists because of this man. Altair didn't just define the assassin brotherhood. He basically built it from the ground up, spread it across continents, and then died alone in the dark underneath the very fortress he gave his entire life to. And the worst part is the tragedy started before he could even walk. Altair was born on January 11th, 1165, to a Christian mother and a Muslim father. His mother died bringing him into the world. His father, Umar ibn Lahad, was executed by Al-Mualim after killing a nobleman to protect the Brotherhood's secrets. So before Altair could form a single memory of either parent, both were gone. The order raised him. The order fed him, trained him, gave him purpose, which sounds noble until you realize what that actually means. Every single piece of his identity belonged to an institution, not a family, an institution, and he spent 92 years trying to be worthy of it. Here's where it gets complicated. In 1191, Altair botched a mission to recover the Apple of Eden, broke all 3 tenets of the Creed in one go, and triggered a full Templar assault on Masyaf. His mentor Al-Mualim stripped him of his rank and essentially told him to start over from nothing. Most people would leave. Altair didn't. He couldn't. The Brotherhood was all he had. So he clawed his way back, spent decades as mentor making revolutionary discoveries through the Apple, codified assassin philosophy into the Codex, and expanded the Brotherhood into Europe and Asia. He literally reshaped the entire organization. The cost was everything personal. His wife Maria was killed. His son Sef was murdered by Abbas Sofyan, a traitor inside the Brotherhood, the same Brotherhood Altair had rebuilt with his bare hands. And Abbas, His bitterness toward Altair stretched back decades, to a moment when young Altair told him the truth about his own father's suicide. Altair accidentally created the man who would destroy his family. That's not irony, that's a curse. By the end, Altair was 92 years old, exiled by his own surviving son Darum. He walked into a hidden chamber beneath Masyaf, sat down, and sealed himself inside with the apple. The man who defined the assassin order, who gave it a philosophy, a structure, a global reach, died sitting in the dark with nobody beside him. 66 years as mentor. 0 people at his side when it mattered. But if Altair's tragedy is about giving everything to a cause that couldn't love him back, the next one is about a man who destroyed the cause entirely and might have been right to do it. Shay Patrick Cormac. Most people on this list became tragic because the world happened to them. Shay is different. Shay became tragic because he tried to do the right thing, and it worked, and it was still wrong. Born in 1731 in Ireland, Shay trained as a colonial assassin under Achilles Davenport. He was loyal, he was capable, and in 1755, the Brotherhood sent him to Lisbon to retrieve a precursor artifact from a seismic temple hidden beneath the Carmo convent. Standard mission: go in, grab the artifact, come home a hero. He activated the temple, and the entire city collapsed. The 1755 Lisbon earthquake killed tens of thousands of people in minutes. Buildings folded, fires spread, the ocean pulled back and swallowed what was left, and Shay watched it happen, knowing he was the one who triggered it. Here's where it gets complicated. Shay went back to the Brotherhood and told them what happened. Told them these temples were weapons, not treasure chests. Told them chasing precursor artifacts without understanding them was going to get more people killed. And the assassins, the people he trusted with his life, tried to murder him for it, shot him off a cliff, and left him for dead. So he joined the Templars, not because he wanted power, not because he was angry, because he genuinely believed the assassins were reckless idealists who would sacrifice thousands of innocent lives for their mission and sleep fine afterward. And for 16 years, he hunted his former brothers one by one. He killed Adewale, he killed Hope Jensen, he killed Chevalier de la Vérendrye, and in 1776, at Versailles, he killed Charles Dorian while reclaiming the very precursor box that had destroyed his faith in the first place. The fan debate around Shay is loud. Was he right? Was he wrong? Was leaving the Brotherhood justified, but joining the Templars a step too far? Both sides have a point. But here's the thing, none of it matters, because the assassins sent him into that temple knowing full well what previous expeditions had done. They had already caused the Haiti earthquake in 1751 the exact same way, and they still sent Shay in blind. The Brotherhood he trusted didn't betray him with a bullet off that cliff. They betrayed him the moment they handed him that mission without telling him the truth. So Shay switched sides, and he spent the rest of his life believing the Templars were the lesser evil, never fully grasping that he'd traded one group of manipulators for another. He died loyal to the Templar order, never questioning, never doubting, convinced to the very end that he'd chosen the right side. Altair lost everything and understood why. Shay lost everything and understood nothing. He just thought he did, which is so much worse. And the man he killed at Versailles, Charles Dorian, he had a son, a boy who grew up without a father because of Shay's mission. That boy's name was Arno Dorian. Most of the assassins on this list had their lives destroyed by external forces. Someone invaded their home, killed their family, burned their village. Arno Dorian is different. Arno destroyed himself. He was 8 years old when his father, Charles Dorian, was murdered at the Palace of Versailles in 1776. And if that name sounds familiar, it should, because Charles Dorian is the same man Shay Cormac killed earlier on this list. So Arno's tragedy literally begins where Shay's ends, which is, not ideal. After Charles's death, Arno was taken in by Francois de la Serre, the Grand Master of the Templar Order. The boy whose father was an assassin was raised inside a Templar household by the leader of the entire operation. He grew up alongside Francois's daughter Elise, fell in love with her before he had any idea what assassins or Templars even were, and built his entire emotional foundation on a relationship that was structurally impossible from the start. But here's where it gets complicated. Arno joined the Brotherhood, got pulled into the chaos of the French Revolution, and watched everything collapse. Francois was murdered. Multiple Brotherhood subordinates died on Arno's watch. The council exiled him. He killed his own mentor, Pierre Balek, after Balek's extremism made him a threat to both sides. And Elise, the one person Arno was fighting for above everything else, died before he could save her. Every single thing the creed cost him, it cost him personally. Not politically, not strategically, personally. Then came the drinking. The depression was so severe that the brotherhood he'd sacrificed Ellie's for wanted nothing to do with him. He was a ghost in a city full of guillotines, and nobody cared. But the thing that defines Arno's psychology more than any of that is a vision. A recurring nightmare where he chases his father's killer through dark corridors, catches him, pulls back the hood, and sees his own face staring back at him. His subconscious had decided that he was responsible for Charles's death, not Shay, not the Templars, him, an 8-year-old boy who happened to be in the wrong palace at the wrong time. That guilt poisoned everything he touched. It's why he could never fully accept Elise's Templar identity, because the war between the factions wasn't just political for Arno, it was the thing that killed his father. And it's why he couldn't save Elise, even when he was physically standing right there. Arno was never fully present. He'd been chasing a hooded version of himself through corridors in his own head since he was a child, and no amount of blade work was going to fix that. The cruelest part is that his guilt was completely disproportionate to his actual culpability. He didn't kill Charles. He didn't cause the revolution. He didn't make Bellic go rogue, but he carried all of it like it was his fault, and that weight crushed him more effectively than any Templar conspiracy ever could. Most assassins on this list were broken by the world. Arno was broken by himself. But if you think internal self-destruction is the worst kind of tragedy an assassin can face, wait until you see what happens when the world takes everything from you and then asks you to say thank you. Connor Kenway. Connor Kenway was doomed before he was born. Half British, half Mohawk, belonging fully to neither world, and carrying a name that would guarantee him nothing but suffering in every direction he turned. When Connor was a child, his Mohawk village was burned to the ground. He watched his mother Kanyatiweo die in the fire, and he spent years believing Charles Lee was the one who did it. That belief became his entire identity. It wasn't grief, it was a mission. Every skill he learned, every blade he sharpened, every alliance he forged with the Assassin Brotherhood was built on a foundation of, I'm going to find that man, and I'm going to kill him. And when he finally understood the full picture, when he learned the truth about who was actually responsible, it didn't fix a single thing. His mother was still dead. The fire still happened. The only difference was that now the rage had nowhere clean to point, but the isolation is what really got him. Connor was too native for the colonists he fought alongside, too compromised for the Mohawk elders who saw his British father's blood as a betrayal, and too idealistic for the Assassin Brotherhood who tolerated his passion but never prioritized his people. He existed in the gap between three worlds, accepted by none of them. Every room he walked into, he was the outsider. And then there's Hatham. Connor's father was the Templar Grand Master. Let that sit for a second. The man running the organization Connor had sworn to destroy was his own father. And in 1781, the two of them finally collided in one of the most emotionally devastating confrontations in the entire franchise. Hatham knew exactly who he was fighting. He chose that outcome. And in his final moments, before Connor ended his life, Hatham revealed genuine feeling for his son. Not regret, not surrender, just acknowledgement. I should have killed you long ago, which is, not ideal as a final father-son bonding moment. Connor won. He killed Hatham. He hunted down Charles Lee. He helped build the American Revolution from the ground up, and none of it mattered. The assassins he served never prioritized the Mohawk people. The patriots he bled for became just another controlling power, redistributing land that wasn't theirs and building systems of oppression on the bones of the old ones. The Templar threat he had sacrificed his father and his childhood to eliminate simply reorganized under new management. Different names, same machinery. Connor spent his final years watching the world he had fought for calcify into the exact same oppressive structure he had tried to destroy. No family left to soften it. No brotherhood that truly understood him. No country that saw him as anything other than useful. He didn't just lose people. He lost the belief that fighting could change anything at all. Every single thing he sacrificed, his mother, his father, his identity, his youth, fed into a machine that kept grinding forward without him. Most assassins in this franchise lose something. Connor lost the ability to believe the loss was worth it. But if Connor's tragedy was political, structural, baked into systems bigger than any one man could fight, then the next entry is something rawer. Something that starts with a father holding his dead son and ends with an entire brotherhood built on that grief. Bayek of Siwa. Every single name on this list, every hidden blade, every creed ever whispered in the dark, exists because of one moment in 49 BCE. A father watching his son die and being completely powerless to stop it. Bayek was a Medjay. That's not just a job title. It's a bloodline of protectors stretching back centuries. Guardians of Siwa, who who kept their people safe from anything the desert threw at them. His son Kemu was supposed to inherit that legacy. Instead, members of the Order of the Ancients dragged Bayek and Kemu into a vault beneath Siwa and had the boy killed while Bayek stood there, restrained, watching his child die in front of him. This wasn't collateral damage. This was a group of masked men deliberately killing a child because he was inconvenient to their plans, and they made his father watch. That single act broke everything Bayek was. The protector who couldn't protect, the Medjay whose bloodline ended in a dark room. So he did what anyone would do with that kind of grief. He turned it into a weapon. Bayek and his wife, Aya, spent years hunting every member of the order across Egypt. They killed them one by one. And when it was over around 47 BCE, they took that grief and built something out of it, the Hidden Ones, an organization dedicated to fighting corruption from the shadows, an organization that would eventually become the Assassin Brotherhood. Every protagonist on this list is a direct consequence of what happened to Kemu. Every creed recited, every leap of faith taken, every blade drawn from a bracer traces back to a father who lost his son in Siwa. Bayek didn't just start a revenge quest. He accidentally started a global movement that outlived him by thousands of years. But here's where it gets quiet instead of loud. The Brotherhood didn't just cost Bayek his son, it cost him his wife. Aya became Amenet, shed her old name entirely, and moved to Rome to lead the Hidden Ones expansion. She chose the cause over the marriage. The very organization Bayek built to honor Kemu's memory became the thing that pulled Aya away from him for good. He lost his son to the Order. He destroyed the Order. He built something meant to make sure it never happened again. And that something took his wife too. Bayek is the most important person in the entire Assassin's Creed timeline, the Foundation Stone, and he spent his remaining years in Egypt, alone, the mentor of an organization that had already outgrown him. No son, no wife, just sand and a creed that would echo for millennia without ever mentioning his name. Not all stories have a moral. All stories have. Some of them are just a man building a cathedral out of grief and then sitting inside it by himself forever. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.